Hello, everybody. This is an interview with Joey Blake. We're talking to each other from halfway around the world. I'm on Hawaii Island, and Joey's in Kigali, Rwanda. So there we have it. How beautiful to be with you, Joey. We're in anticipation of our air prayers next Sunday. Um, I would love to ask you, since you and I have known each other something like 35 years, it turns out there are a lot of things we've never talked about. But that's why I'm so interested to do an interview with you.
Yeah, it's great.
Um, okay, yeah. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is what is bringing you joy these days?
Wow. You got big questions for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Bringing me joy. Well, honestly, I have to say that the biggest thing that's bringing me joy these days is being able to be in the motherland, to be in the homeland of my ancestors, and really understand what I've been coming back and forth for 8 years. So, understanding that this is a place that's very home for me is is not what it is. It's one of the like residuals of the pandemic. Is that because we're teaching online, I didn't have to be in Boston, and I could be wherever I wanted to be, and so I could be able to come here and be where I want to be, and and finding my finding the ground, finding the soil under my feet and really understanding where I am, and starting to really understand my place in this place. I've been doing a lot of teaching, and there's lots of things that I wanted to bring here that I'm being able to organize. And so for me, the joy is be able to come home and bring things that are necessary to the people that live here.
Beautiful. So I'm figuring by now everybody can hear the rain that's falling on my tin roof. Joey and I have discussed we both have tin roofs in our tropical places. And when it rains, that's what it is. So don't worry, it's not static, it's just rain. Um,
I love
this
it.
is a question Jenny wanted me to ask you. She said, when you realized that you had this incredibly deep bass voice, what did it feel like? What does it feel like to have that kind of resonance going on in your body? You must feel that vibration. Can you say anything about that?
Okay, so it's very interesting because um, I've been singing since I was 3 or 5 years old, and I started out as a soprano. I was a soprano, and I was a soprano until I mean, maybe till 14 years old. And then when I got into high school, all of a sudden, I wasn't a soprano anymore. I was like an alto tenor. And then by the time I got to like I think it was maybe my, I don't know, junior, sophomore, end of my sophomore, beginning of my junior year, all of a sudden I was a bass. It was all of a sudden too.
Wow.
All of a sudden I couldn't sing as high as I was anymore, and it was that year that I started studying with a lady from San Francisco Conservatory who happened to live in Clear Lake where we were living at the time. And so I started taking private lessons, and she started working with me. And the first thing that she worked on with me was my falsetto and how to traverse from my chest voice to my head voice to back and forth. And we worked a long time with that. So she said, I can tell that you used to sing in a higher range, and now that you're really struggling because you can't go there anymore. So we're going to teach you how to get across your breaks so that you don't have to worry about where you are, what you're singing, and so then you can sing whatever you want like you used to. So and then but the thing that was really interesting is the first time, um, trying to keep this PG, but the first time I was with with the lady, and we were laying, and she was laying on my back, I think. I was like laying down watching TV, and she was laying on my back with her head or something, and I started talking, and she says, "Ooh." She said, "Do that again." I was like, "What?" She's like, "Man, when you talk, your whole back just resonates like crazy, you know." And the thing is that soon after that particular time that happened is when we started working with Bobby,
Uh-huh.
and and all of us that were working at that time. I mean, none of us had any idea what we were going to learn in that experience. We didn't realize all the things we were going to learn in that experience. Just being in his presence because of how crazy, um, well, how dedicated he was at that moment. I remember, when we were working in San Mateo, and he'd be walking around on the stage while we were getting ready for the show, and he's singing chromatic scales, at like 120. It's like- it used to be crazy. But for me, it was a thing when I really realized that singing was a whole body experience. It wasn't just the technique you learn and learn how to do this, but it was really that our body was really our instrument. The front, the middle, the back, the
Yeah.
chest, the neck. I mean, everything. It's like, from your feet all the way up. And then all of a sudden it took on a whole nother thing for me. It's like, okay, well, I'm an instrumentalist,
Yeah.
but I can sing words too.
Yeah. Ah, that's so beautiful. Well, maybe this is a chance to say you and I have been in Voicestra, the original Voicestra group. There were 12 of us with Bobby. We did all that studying. Then we were in So together, which was what we did when Bobby went off to conduct orchestras, and we wanted to keep we wanted to keep singing together. There were 6 of us in there, or 8.
There was 8 at first,
Yeah,
and then we
yeah,
shrunk. Yeah.
yeah. And then out of that came We Be Three, you and me and David Worm, because we agreed to sing together forever. And we were the 3, I think, out of the Voicestra who had the most devotion to pure improvisation.
Yeah.
What do you want to say about We Be Three?
Well, it's interesting because the one thing I would say is that it's like Weeby Three came via the new improved, I mean, not new improved, but the new version of what what Voices Tour was, because it was the original version, and then there was the version from Circle Songs, and then I remember while we were doing that, I remember us standing backstage, getting ready to go on stage one day, and we were talking like, well, what happens if we just like it's the 3 of us and nobody's in charge? I was like, yeah, yeah, we be 3, okay, cool, and then
That was
and then
your name, good name.
I mean, and then we were off to the races at that point. And the thing that was really beautiful is, for me, it was a twofold kind of situation because I remember at the end of the original Voicestra run, we had those runs at the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco. We did those Monday nights. Was it Monday nights? I think it was something like that. Yeah. And I remember as it was coming to a close, I just didn't. I never like to ride a horse till it's over. I don't want to ride a horse till it dies. So I'd like to get off and be off to the next thing. So I just realized that was pretty much our swan song at that point. And so then that's when I left to go sing with Louise Robinson
And
in Street
the
Side.
name of the Street Sounds, yeah. Another
Yeah.
a cappella group in the Bay Area.
Right. And so I went to go sing with String Sounds. I mean, I had already done that, and it was funny because you know what? That night that I said to you guys that I was going to go, that this was probably it for me with Voices to realizing that it was probably going to be over. It was the same night that Bobby, I think, was getting ready to talk to you guys about hard choral.
Oh.
And I remember Danny came and talked to me. He says, "Joey, man, you should talk to Bobby, man." He says, "Why are you leaving?" I was like, "Well, man, I don't want to stop singing. I mean, I want to sing. That's what I do. I sing. I'm a singer. That's what I want to do." He goes, "Man, you should talk to Bobby, man. You should really talk to him. And the funny thing is, he was trying to tell me that I should talk to Bobby and tell him that I wanted to keep singing because I probably would have been in hardcore.
Danny was our is Bobby's extraordinary sound engineer who always had Bobby's ear because he was so sensible. So he would often be the intermediary between Bobby and us. Well, the coming and going is all part of life. That's that's what happened. I left Sovo So. And
Yeah,
yet you and David and me just kept this thread going of wanting to
yeah,
improvise, but wanting to improvise without a leader. That was huge. And so
yeah,
now we have this group called Gimme Five, which is back with Bobby
yeah,
and Judy Vinar from Minnesota, who's been with Voices for a long time. And it's the same situation of complete improvised concerts, and we're just really waiting to get back on the road, wouldn't you say?
yes. We're all waiting. Yeah. The one thing I was trying to say, I took a long time to say it, but the time I took to go and sing with Street Sounds was was some of the necessary learning I needed at that moment.
Yeah,
Because in Voice Extra, in the original ones, there was always me and Roger singing together. Well, Nick, I'm sorry.
yeah.
I shouldn't say that. Me and Nicholas singing together. And it was always, so there was always the restriction. I was watching Bobby do crazy stuff when he sang bass alone, and understanding,
I
oh man,
see.
wow, that's so beautiful. Oh, that's so cool. But I could never really like have that kind of room to do
Because you
that.
were a
So
section.
because I was a section, and when I
Yeah,
finally went to go sing with Street Songs, I was on the bottom by myself.
I
So I could
got
do
it.
whatever I want. I could
Yeah.
like change the groove and change the feel. And I mean, it just taught me so much. And
Uh-huh.
because they were a different kind of a group, they had singers that weren't so polished, really good singers, but not as polished as far as technical or theory or that kind of thing. So oftentimes I'd find myself in the middle of a song, and they would have perfect three-part harmony, but based on the song we were singing, they may end up in another key, like right now. And I had to learn how to change and
Uh-huh.
move to
Uh-huh.
the new key. So it
Uh-huh.
taught my ears how to hear
Uh-huh.
harmony in like a really deep way because because nobody's in the audience is going to realize that I'm singing the right part, but they left because they're just
Yeah.
going to be like, well, they're all together, but you're not. So it taught me a lot, and it also taught me a lot about like how to change feels and grooves and different kinds
Mm,
of things like that because you're singing bass.
yeah.
So that
So
was some really valuable things for me, and it really prepared me for WeBe3 and being able to facilitate our trio in that way too.
because we needed to be very flexible trio that anybody could lead, everybody would support no matter what. So
Catching
Joey,
harmonies and
yeah,
things like on a dime.
quick.
Yeah.
Um, that group is still alive. We're ready to go at any point too.
Yes.
So you've been singing all your life. You grew up in a really musical family, church
Yes.
going musical family, and did you always know you were going to be a singer as an adult? Was there ever another career that you considered?
Okay, so I can say, I mean, I always knew I was going to be a singer. I did. I mean, I used to have these reoccurring dreams when I was a kid of myself. It was really odd actually because I would be on my bed singing, and I'd be falling like through this sky, and there'd be like confetti coming down in like a spotlight or whatever, and I'd end up on a stage. And this used to happen like all the time when I was little. But I will say that at one point, I grew up with my family. We used to watch shows, like different kinds of shows on TV. And one of the shows we used to watch was Perry Mason, and I used to love Perry Mason. Because like my thing was like Perry Mason makes him confess because they would be on the. I just had to kill him. I just had to. So for a long time, I was like, I mean, and my mother used to like make really big jokes about the fact that I love to argue. So we should say, if the stop sign says stop, you say it said go. So these kinds of things. And so I just for a while I really entertained the fact that, well, I want to go to law school. I want to be a lawyer.
Uh-huh.
And ironically, it's my son who's the lawyer.
That's really beautiful. Well, you have that detailed Virgo mind. I could see that, Joey. But I'm really glad you didn't do that. I'm
Me too.
really so glad you didn't do that. And then you have ended up being an arranger, a writer, arranger, producer in the studio, and an engineer. So how did that come about? Which
You
leads
know,
us to the tracks you're going to make for Sunday. How you
yes.
love to do those things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember growing up as a child in church, and one of the things that used to depress me so much, because I grew up with some really great singers. I mean, really fantastically great singers. And then, my uncle was a great musician, and he played with Evan Hawkins and Helen Stevens, and and all these people, James Cleveland, whatever. So like not being able to hear a good singer sing because of limitations used to drive me out of my mind. You know, this great singer would come to visit our church, and they would ask them to come up and sing, and they say, "Well, I'd really love to, but I don't have anybody to play for me. I don't, I didn't bring a musician with me, or or this didn't happen." And I mean, that's why I started learning how to play instruments. I was like, that's never going to be me. I'm never going to be the guy who they ask to sing, and I can't sing because I can't,
Oh.
because there's nobody to play. I'll be able to do it myself. And and then for me, growing up, doing in music and doing studio sessions and these other things and whatever. And I remember like being participating in a lot of recording sessions and whatever, and understanding how much money they were spending, and thinking, wow, man, that's really hard. I mean, it's like, so that means that your imagination about what kinds of music you can bring into the world is going to be limited about how many funds you have, which
Uh-huh.
I think is a horrible reason for you not to be able to do that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so it was really in Solo So when I really realized, I said, we're spending all this money for this, and I really like this kind of thing. And so I've always been like a tech, I mean, I like math. I like I like logic. I mean, as far as logical thinking and organization, and I mean, I'm just that kind of guy, and I just started playing with stuff. I mean, but I mean, even before we got really deep in voice restoration, I'd already started, working with sequencers, and even when I was in the military, working with sequencers, and I used to sneak into the squadron at night because they had an 8-track reel to reel, and I'd like do some recordings and whatever, and
Uh-huh.
do the piano, and then go back and do vocals and do overdubs and whatever. I mean, even in high school I was doing that, with the tape, do the tape on the mixer board, and then put a tape across the room and do the rest of it, and switch the tapes. And
Well, the technology has like zoomed in your lifetime.
it's like, are you crazy? I mean, no, we not really. I mean, I went from 4-track cassette to digital desktop. So it was always one of those things. And for me, I was always interested in being able to find somebody with imagination and musical talent, like I felt I had at that time when I was in my youth, and be able to give them that opportunity to express their um uh, their imagination and their musical prowess without having to worry about not having any money.
Uh-huh.
So I actually went into this not trying to make money at it, and that was never the motivation for it. It was really just a facilitation kind of thing. It turned into some other things. I mean, especially like I said, because I started doing it when I was with Soul is really when I started actually doing it. And it was just right after you guys left, and you and Nick had left, and we were doing this thing, and we were like struggling about trying to schedule studio time, whatever, and then we're trying to go on the road. I'm like going, you know what? I mean, Danny said, you guys should just get some eight tracks, get some ADATs and whatever, and then record in the hotel room when you're on the road or whatever. And
That would be Danny, the engineer, Bobby's
I
engineer,
said,
once again.
it's like, well, I mean, you just have to get good signal and do your thing,
Yeah.
And I always was really good friends with Danny because I was really into it. Danny and Rick, I mean, I was always talking to them and trying to ask them questions. And same thing with Leslie at Skywalker. And I mean, just anybody that we came into contact, how did you get that to sound like that? How did you do that? How did you do?
Uh-huh.
Because it always made, because to me, I understood the difference when they did it and when someone else did it. When someone else was doing it might sound good, but when they did it, it was always sounding good. So it's like, so as soon as you get to that thing where it wasn't sounding good, man, if Danny was here, it'd be great. So when I talked to him, like, well, how do you get me to sound like that? And I just started asking questions and started figuring it out. And
That's
so,
so beautiful.
and then, like I said, we were doing all this running around trying to figure it out. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna spend money, and after, me and Linda, we were doing that thing with Kenny Loggins with Vicky Randall and
Linda
whatever.
Tillery, yeah, Vicky
And
Randall.
until
Yep.
every Ricky Mantle, we were doing that thing with Kenny Loggins, and then of course he, he let us go. Actually, I got
He
laid
let
off.
us, yeah.
I got laid off at Paisley Park on my birthday in Minneapolis. It was it was deep, right? So they gave us some severance, and the severance money that they gave us because they had guaranteed us something, and I should have hooked up with Linda in negotiation because she did way better than me, but what I did is I got enough money that I could buy the Roland 1680. So I bought that 1680, and then I just said to the group and said, okay, I have a way for us to record. Why don't, instead of paying a studio guy, just pay me that, and then I don't have to go out and get a job, and I can just do this for the band.
Yep.
And that's really how I ended up in there. But it was also because of June Millington.
Uh-huh.
She saw me helping Street Sounds do a recording one time, and she called me back to IMA in Bodega Bay, and she said, I really want you to come, and I want to talk to you. And she sat me down. And she says, I was watching you do your thing, and you feel like a Quincy Jones kind of thing, and I
Ah,
really think you should think about doing
that's
this.
so great. June Millington, one of the great women rock guitar players with the groundbreaking group Fanny, who's still got this organization called IMA. They moved to the East Coast and they educate young girls in playing instruments, writing music, and recording and being the one in control in the studio. So, yeah, you two have that in common. That's beautiful she said that to you. Those things really make a difference, don't they?
Oh man, no, I mean she changed my life at that moment. I
Yeah.
mean I love her like
Yep.
nobody's business because
June
I mean it
Millington.
was just nobody had ever said something like that to me, and it took me aback a little bit because I'm like, oh, Quincy Jones, I'm not Quincy Jones. But just for somebody, I mean, I've always been a person who doesn't believe in walls. I don't believe in what's not possible. I believe in what is possible. But that was the first time somebody told me something beyond what I thought was possible.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I love her. I thank her for that.
Yep, that's so beautiful. So so tell me how you're approaching this the tracks for the session, the air prayer session on Sunday. Tell me what your thought is.
Well, I mean,
So
originally,
we're praying, we're
yeah,
whatever
we're
that
playing.
means to you.
Well, I mean, whatever that means to anybody. Yeah, exactly. Um, I mean, originally I was thinking that I would spend the week recording a bunch of different kinds of things. I would just do like we do at Omega and just every day get up and sing something and play and then find something and then mix
Hold
it and
on.
then
Omega is the institute in New York where we teach every summer with Bobby. It's called Circle, and we're on the faculty. And you're talking about the morning session, the warm up.
No, I'm talking about our circles, the circles that we
Oh,
did.
yeah, yeah.
That process of just we just coming up with music, we're catching songs, basically. What I like that way Bobby says that. Catching songs. So I thought I would just get up every morning and catch songs and put something together and make it. And then when we were talking about it, when we had the conversation last week and we were talking about what it would be and whatever, it just dawned on me that it felt like it should feel like dirt. The composition that we recorded, that was part of a composition that we did with Oberlin Dance Company with Bobby McFerrin and Voicester in
It was a
Berkeley.
it was a score for a whole dance, and it was a continuous piece of music.
Yes, Ed Zellerbach. And so so I felt like maybe I should do something that was more along those lines. Um, so I've taken some pieces from the Come Inside the Circle album, and I'm gonna incorporate some other things in there, and I've tried to create basically a a 20 to 25-minute track that is like dirt, but it'll be circle.
Great.
So at some point after I get it all together, I'll give it a name. I don't know what that's going to be, but we'll improvise that part too.
Yeah.
you know,
Because I know how much you believe in circle songs and in getting people to sing. But would you talk about what that means to you to get to? You're a teacher. You're a professor at Berkeley College, and you're now working in Rwanda with a bunch of the singers there. So
I'm
talk
working at
talk to me about how you what that does for you. What how that inspires you.
well, I've been singing in choirs and groups since I was 5 years old. Um, the Growing up in the Bay Area and singing in a choir with my aunt and my uncle, um, and being in places singing with Walter Hawkins, Gerald Coley, Helen Stevens, James Cleveland. I mean, these are, it was, you're in these rooms with these choirs that are like amazing. Are you kidding me? But the power of singing in a group is something I've known since I was a child. And not just five or six. We're talking like 20, 25, 35 people all singing in the same way with the same intention, with the same. I mean, the power of that sound and the rhythm is just it's indescribable. It's not really something that I could actually verbalize for you. And so that's always been the foundation of music for me. And I remember even David Fraser. He said to me one time, he says, you know, it, you're so embedded in groups, it's hard for you to do something alone.
Hmm.
And that's very true. It was hard to hear, but it's very true, that I just feel so safe inside a group.
Hmm.
I do, and fulfilling my function in that ensemble.
Yeah.
You know, and and the beauty of what we create together, because we create what we create individually, and the end result is something so astonishing, and especially with the way we do it now, because nobody knows what each one of us are going to come up with, but we find a way to weave that thing together and make it unified. And so for me, circle songs is just that. The time that I was doing when I had the grant from the California Arts Council, and I was doing 4 hours of circle singing improvisation stuff at La Pena every Saturday for 3 years. We did this, right? I never knew who was going to show up.
Yeah.
So each time I had to figure out how to make it work. Sometimes I didn't have any guys. Sometimes I had all guys. Sometimes I didn't have any women. Sometimes I had all women. Sometimes I had really good singers. Sometimes I had
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they had rhythm. Sometimes they But you got a 4 hour session, so you got to make this.
4 hours.
You got to figure out how to make this happen. You know. But man, did that teach me a lot. But it also taught me a lot because of all of the really close friends and relationships I made during that time that are still that are still here now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I met Rick. That's how I met Wesley. That's how I met Dima. I mean, it just the
Hmm.
list could go on and on. I mean, we could be here for hours
And
talking about
probably people whose names you might not even remember were
it.
inspired and have their lives in music a lot because of that time.
Yeah,
So it fans out. And now you've got all the singers from Berkeley who are with you, but then have graduated and they spread out and go other places. And
yeah,
now it's moving into Rwanda. So,
yeah, yeah. I mean, the tribe. Yeah, the tribe is just like it's a crazy. They're
so
everywhere. And
talk about the tribe
well, the singing tribe. Well, I mean, they thought of one of my colleagues, Bill Banfield, who is a doctor who just retired actually
at Berkeley.
at Berkeley.
Yeah.
He was he works for the Africana Studies department. He was the head of the Africana Studies at Berkeley, and one of the things that they had a concert series that they would do, and they would bring artists in residencies. And so some of the people they brought was Bobby, they of course Bobby, and they brought Issei, and they've and on and on, right? So when he was going to bring Bobby, he says, I want you to organize a group, for this. And so at that time, you had just started working. And
Yep.
so we talked and I said, let's do this together. Let's put this group together, because we knew what it was like to go through those 3 years of, of auditions that we went through to be with Bobby. But most importantly, we understood, and was my thinking, that we understood the kind of people that Bobby would want to work with,
Hmm.
knowing that we're at a college where people are young and they're trying to start their careers and everybody wants something for their resume and all
Yeah.
of these things that happen. That is not bad, it's just reality. um, I wanted to make sure that the group that we put together was a real group of people who really had the heart and love of singing and also community and
And,
not
s- and
individuality.
and such an international group was possible there.
Yes, and it was very important for me to make sure that it was representative of all the countries that
Yeah.
we could possibly
Yeah.
represent. You
Yeah.
know, and interestingly enough, I mean, there were some singers I think that we really wanted to keep, but we were missing some representation. So we kind of moved into different
Yeah.
directions.
Yeah. Well,
You know.
you're and that group is those students will never, those singers are now out in their lives. They will never forget that time. I think there one of the things you and I have is a longevity of our relationship as singers together. And not everybody gets to have that. And the beauty of knowing somebody over a lot of years and going through a lot of stuff together on stage and off stage, it just makes the singing so deep and beautiful. So it's a very big deal to have you at the air prayers on Sunday, Joey. You and I could go on talking about this for a long time because there's so many things I know about you and all these other things I just learned about you in this talk. So I I'm hoping there'll be other times, and I'm really looking forward to the session on Sunday. I hope a lot of people make their way to the air prayers, and we'll and the subject is home. So maybe you'd close by saying, or maybe just sing to us a little bit about home, whatever that
Yeah.
means to you.
Well, for me, home is thinking about the things that I remember. So one of the things I remember so clearly when I think about home and I think about my childhood is I remember the days when I would wake up and there would be music playing and I would hear don't moan, and it would be the Amazing Grace album playing of Aretha Franklin, and then I remember being in the car with my father going fishing and hearing, you know, uh, call it stormy Monday, Tuesday just as bad. And hearing being, and those are the things, and then listening and watching old movies and the Bing Crosby songs and the things. And so for me, my home is music. Music is home, and each song like reminds me of that thing that felt home, that felt safe and warm to me. And then when I get here, I hear all the rhythms. You know, all of that. I mean, here is where I realized why that resonated with me so deeply, even before I came to the continent. It's because that was it. So that those 10, 11 years that I played in Katoja, with the West African ensemble that I played with in the Bay Area, Kino Kololo, you know what I mean? The reason why is the reason why that just like grabbed my body so
Whew.
deeply is because that's home for me. So that's home for me.
That's beautiful. Right on, Joey. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you, my brother.
I love you, my sister, so much.
We'll see you on Sunday.
You know what I'm saying?